Have you ever wondered what happens behind the closed doors of a funeral home? What secrets are kept within the walls of the prep room? Today, we're pulling back the curtain. These aren't urban legends or ghost stories whispered around a campfire. These are 5 real, documented accounts from licensed mortuary and crematory staff, professionals who deal with death every single day. What they experienced in these moments changed their entire perspective on life, death, and what might lie beyond. Prepare yourselves, because these stories are not for the faint of heart. Our first story comes from a veteran funeral director. We'll call him James, who had seen it all. Or so he thought. One evening, he was working late, preparing the body of an elderly woman who had passed away peacefully in her sleep. Everything was routine. The room was silent, save for the low hum of the ventilation system. As James was performing the embalming, he heard a faint sound. He paused, listening. It was a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. He dismissed it as his mind playing tricks on him, a common occurrence after long hours. But then he heard it again, clearer this time. It was a single word. Cold. The voice seemed to emanate directly from the woman on his table. His blood ran cold. He checked for any signs of life, any reflex, any breath, knowing full well it was impossible. There was nothing. He tried to rationalize it, a draft, the building settling, but the voice had been too distinct. Shaken, he finished his work as quickly as possible, the word cold echoing in the sterile silence of the room. He never spoke of it to his colleagues, but he said he never again felt truly alone during his late-night shifts. Next we have an account from a young apprentice named Chloe who was working at a city morgue. A man had been brought in, a victim of a sudden, tragic accident. The autopsy had been completed, and it was Chloe's job to assist in preparing the body for the family's viewing. As she was cleaning the man's hands, she noticed something clutched tightly in his fist. It was common for bodies to have clenched hands due to rigor mortis, but this was different. With great difficulty, she and her mentor gently pried the fingers open. Inside they found a small, intricately folded piece of paper. It looked like an origami crane, but it was made from a photograph. Carefully, they unfolded it. It was a picture of a young girl smiling brightly, a picture that wasn't among his personal effects. The police had found no identification, and no family had come forward yet. It was a complete mystery. Who was this girl? How did this photo end up so tightly in his hand at the moment of his death? It was a final, silent message from a man they would never know, a poignant reminder that even in death, the connections that matter most can physically cling to us. Our third story takes us to a crematorium. The operator, a man named Mark, was preparing for the final committal of the day. The decedent was a woman who had requested to be cremated with a few personal mementos, a stack of letters and a small, worn teddy bear from her childhood. It was a standard procedure. Mark placed the items in the casket alongside her, said a few quiet words of respect, and began the cremation process. Hours later, when the cycle was complete and the chamber had cooled, he opened the door to retrieve the cremated remains. Everything had been reduced to ash and bone fragments, as expected. Everything, that is, except the teddy bear. There it was, sitting in the center of the ash pile, completely untouched. It wasn't even singed. The fabric was pristine, its little button eyes staring back at him. Mark, a man of science and process, was floored. He checked the chamber's temperature logs. They were normal, exceeding 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. There was no scientific explanation. It was impossible. He carefully removed the bear, his hands trembling. The family was never told. To this day, Mark keeps that teddy bear locked away in his office, a stark, inexplicable token of a day that defied all logic. This next tale comes from an embalmer who worked in a small, family-owned funeral home in the countryside. they received the body of a man who had been an avid gardener his entire life. His family mentioned how he could make anything grow, and that his garden was his pride and joy. During the embalming, the funeral director noticed a strange, dark discoloration on the man's chest, right over his heart. It wasn't a bruise or a post-mortem stain. It had an unusual, organic pattern. He didn't think much more of it, attributing it to a unique medical condition. The man was buried a few days later in the local cemetery. About a month passed. The funeral director happened to be visiting the cemetery to pay respects to a family member when he walked past the gardener's grave. He stopped dead in his tracks. Sprouting from the exact spot on the grave, directly above where the man's heart would be, was a single, perfect red rose growing straight out of the earth. There were no other roses in that entire section of the cemetery. The man's family later confirmed he had never planted roses there. It was as if his lifelong passion, his very essence, refused to be buried with him, blooming one last time from the place he held it most dear. Our final story is perhaps the most unsettling. It was shared by a mortician who was tasked with a reconstruction case for a young woman who had been in a terrible car crash. Her face was severely damaged, and her family desperately wanted an open casket viewing to say a proper goodbye. The mortician, a true artist in her field, spent 2 full days meticulously recreating her features from photographs. It was emotionally taxing work. Finally, she was finished. The young woman looked peaceful, as if she were simply sleeping. The mortician stepped back to admire her work, feeling a sense of sad satisfaction. Just then, the mortuary's landline phone rang, startling her in the quiet room. She went to her office to answer it, but the line was dead. When she returned to the prep room, her heart stopped. On the peaceful face she had just perfected, a single crystal-clear tear was tracing a path down the young woman's cheek. There were no leaks in the ceiling, no source of moisture anywhere. It was just one solitary tear. The mortician said it felt not like a spooky event, but like a sign of release, of gratitude. It was a moment that solidified her belief that her work was more than just a technical skill. It was a sacred service for souls in transition. These stories, from a whispered word to an impossible rose, blur the lines between our world and whatever comes next. They remind us that the professionals who care for our departed loved ones are witnesses to mysteries we may never understand. What they see and hear behind those closed doors stays with them forever, a quiet testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into the unknown. If these stories moved you, please give this video a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next exploration into the unexplained. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.